I am impertinent. Hi guys, welcome to my booktube. Get a little of a redo as we start filming for the second time in 4 years. If you like my new bookshelves, probably don't get used to them, but my mom just built these and it's a nice quiet place in the house to film. Plus I just got all these books up. So I thought it'd be cool to show you guys. Yes, this was a present for my dad for Christmas, which is fair. I think he's cute, right? But anyway. So, episode 3 of Percy Jackson. What are our thoughts? So, I'd like to say first that I think that Medusa is something that they've done pretty well in every adaptation. I mean, I don't think they really did anything with Medusa in the musical, but otherwise, for all the faults that the movies have, and they have faults, bringing Uma Thurman's head around the country with them was hilarious. And I will say that the scene definitely had some faults, but compared to some of the other mistakes that they made in the movies, I would say that the Medusa scene in the movie is one of the least bad things, right? It's not at the same level as the Lotus Casino, which is fantastic in every way, but it's not bad, right? On the other hand, though, I think the TV show did better than the books. And I'm going to get into that soon, okay? But let's go from the beginning. We start out with Percy picking who he gets to have on the quest, which I thought was nice because they're kind of chosen for him in the books. He gets to choose. But basically, Annabeth is like, I'm going. You better choose me. And he chooses her because she basically makes him. And he picks Grover because Grover needs to go on the quest so that he can become a seeker or a searcher. This isn't Harry Potter. And so that, while it worked, I kind of liked that he chose his two people based off of his fears, because there is the quote of the prophecy that says that he will be betrayed by one that calls him a friend. And I like that he's actually obviously using that line of the prophecy to make choices. And he definitely keeps that in the back of his mind in the book. But I think that he probably would have chosen the same people either way in the book. Or here, he chooses Grover over Luke because he trusts Grover more than Luke. He hasn't known Luke as long. And so he believes that he can trust Grover to have his well-being and his wants in his mind and to think about them. Whereas he knows that Annabeth cares more about actually completing the quest than, saving his mom. But he also doesn't like her yet and doesn't think they can be friends because they're having such a awkward getting to know you situation, which is the same in the book, but I think that they're making it more obvious and stronger of a feeling in the show. Because in the books, it's okay, they don't really like each other, but, it's not that bad. Whereas here, it feels like they're really, like, they really cannot, like, get around the fact that they, like, clash easily. They clash really easily. And that's something that I think makes sense here. Because they clash in the books, but it's not as dramatic, I guess. Also, I think they might use their, like, that scene at the end of this episode where they, like, understand each other better instead of the scene with the zoo animals in the back of the van that happens later. And I kind of hope not, because I really like that scene. But we'll get back to that later. Okay, so I like how he chose his people. I was really happy we actually got to see Gabe in the Oracle scene, because I thought they were going to do something different than in the book. And while they didn't have all of his poker buddies as well, it was just really fun and funny to see Gabe just very nonchalantly saying the words to a very dramatic prophecy. So I thought that was good. I liked how they waited to give us the last 2 lines of the prophecy. Even though all of us readers knew it was coming, it made us... I think it made people who were new believe for a second that was the whole prophecy, and it wasn't going to go on. So that was really cool. So he chooses them. I thought it was funny that he doesn't immediately give Grover the flying sneakers that Luke gives him. He just holds them, like he's like, I'll put them on when I need to. Because, like, in the books, they immediately tell him he's not allowed to fly, so he gives them to Grover. But in this one, they tell him later that he can't fly. But they never show that that's why he gave the shoes to Grover. It's almost like he gave the shoes to Grover because he thought that he needed them. Like, Annabeth has a hat that's invisible. Percy has a pen that turns into a sword. Grover needs something. They're about to fight Medusa. And so it really feels like Percy, in that moment where they know that they're going to be going against Medusa any moment, when Grover needs something, and gave it to him in that moment. And I won't say that Grover did a very good job using the shoes. Not necessarily better than he did in the books. I mean, in the books, at least he got a few whacks in. But, you know, what can you do? I liked how they used Alecto, the Fury, as a excuse to force them to go into the house with Medusa, instead of in the books where they just smell hamburgers and are so hungry that they are willing to go into a complete stranger's place with all these creepy statues if it means they can get a hamburger. You know, outside of Grover, he is a vegetarian. He only eats cheese enchiladas and wax paper and tin cans, you know, vegetables. But I love that joke in the books. But this version of the story, they don't feel stupid. They feel like they're making a conscious decision, because while Medusa could be scary in the future, Alecto is a problem right now. And it was a really easy change to make, because they just had to not blow up the bus. And, like, you can not blow up a bus. Like, that is a very small change here. It's not that big of a deal. I also like that Annabeth was the one that killed one of the sisters, but we still have one left. I'm wondering if all 3 of them are going to show up in the underworld like they did in the book or not, because it would make sense if they all already came back. But they've killed Alecto twice, and that would be a lot of times for her to regenerate in one book, for her to do it a 3rd time. So maybe it'll just be the 3rd sister that we haven't met yet. But, I'd have her come back. I think that it would make sense. Anyway, so I like that. I also like that Annabeth had no idea how to buy snacks. She just bought everything. I was like, you have $200, girl. You're going to spend all of them on soda and candy? It was such a 12-year-old thing to do. This is why we don't send 12-year-olds on quests. But anyway, so getting to Medusa, finally, the main focus of the episode. I was so excited because the way that Medusa is done in the books was something that I really liked as a kid. And I think it works really well when you're a kid that understands mythology at that level. Where, like, the stories are more simple. Villains are villains and heroes are heroes. And the monsters are gonna do bad things and the heroes are going to stop them. And if the monsters are good, you're gonna know immediately and you're gonna, for some reason, trust them even though you spend the rest of the time saying that monsters are bad. Like, that's the understanding that you have going into these books as a kid, right? And so them killing off Medusa in the first book with not a lot of fan fodder, was fine. And it was funny, you know? Her, for some reason, having stuff to make fast food, even though it's clearly a place to buy, like, statues and stuff. The weird disconnect there. And the fact that the kids weren't finding this, like, at all suspicious, and then they were slowly finding it suspicious, but Percy was so focused on getting good food, and that he just didn't notice, and he kept seeing her as a nice grandmother figure. I thought it was funny. I just really liked that I liked Medusa. Now, did she decide to go towards murder a little quickly? Maybe, but she's been through some stuff, right? And she said she doesn't like bullies, and that she is clearly going to attack before she has to defend herself. And that makes sense. I think that she makes sense as a character. Is she still a bad guy in this? Yes. Are there portrayals that I would like to see of Medusa where she's not the bad guy? Yes. But I think it would have been... They would have had to rewrite the entire book to make Medusa into, like, the good guy. Because the villains in Medusa's story are Athena and Poseidon. I think Poseidon more than Athena, though actually they're kind of equal. And with the characters we have, you can definitely tell a story with these characters and Medusa, where Medusa's the good guy. But you'd either have to make our main characters the bad guys, or you would have to rewrite the story completely so that we can see both of their points of views, and you would have to leave her alive at the end. Because if our main characters are going to be good guys, and Medusa is going to be a good person, just fully, you know, not like a complex character that attacks when she feels threatened, like she was in the show, then she's gonna have to... They're gonna have to leave her alive. Because she wouldn't deserve to die. And as is seen in the rest of the series, Percy has to make those tough decisions about whether or not they should kill someone or not. Whether or not they are a villain or not. And I hope that they go into the complexity of that in the rest of the show like they do in the books. But that complexity doesn't really show up as much until the second series, like the Heroes of Olympus. And so while I want to see some of that in the adaptations of the original books, we also don't want to make their character growth too soon, right? Like, Percy and Annabeth learn to think differently over years and years. And so they shouldn't be perfect characters, right? Annabeth is not necessarily a good person in this scene. She just believes her mother 110%, refuses to listen to Medusa. So she is an antagonist in this scene. Should Medusa immediately try to kill her? No. But, like, Annabeth is not a good person in this scene. And it's very in her character. This scene with Medusa and Annabeth felt more like, spoilers for Mark of Athena, felt more like her interactions with Ariadne than Medusa. Which means that we're pushing her in directions now in the third episode of this TV show that we didn't push her in the same way until the third book of the second series. And so I'm really intrigued that we're pushing them in these directions early on, right? And that we're looking at these characters more complexly. If anything, this portrayal of Medusa is telling me that the way that they wrote the script for the series wasn't just based off of the original book, but it was based off of the things that Rick might have wanted to change if he got a chance to rewrite this book. Because he wrote this in 2005. And in 2005, he had different... Not only would he have different opinions on these characters, but he learned a lot since then that would change how he sees certain people. He might not have seen Medusa the way that so many people see her now, which is, as she said in this episode, a survivor. Let's be clear. They were really nice to Poseidon in this episode because a lot of portrayals of Medusa, even in ancient Rome, portrayed Poseidon as forcing her to sleep with him in Athena's temple. And he does that a lot to a lot of women in the mythology. Even in the original ancient Greek mythology. Like, Ovid says that with Medusa in the times of the ancient Romans. But in the original Greek mythology, there's plenty of instances of Poseidon treating women like that. And so the books, in a lot of ways, skirt around those details, mostly because it's too grown up in a lot of ways for children to talk about. But it was one of those moments where, because it's made for kids and the main character is a child of Poseidon, they're being nice to him. But at the same time, Medusa does hint at it in this episode, which I thought was really impressive that they kept some of that in there. She tells Percy that his mother was basically attacked by the same monster that she was. That she's not the monster that Poseidon is. And she doesn't explain why she says that, but it hints that maybe it wasn't as nice of a relationship with Poseidon as she pretended it was when she was talking to Annabeth. And I am just really happy with that portrayal as someone who studies Greek mythology. I was really happy that they tried to hit this balance between the content of the original mythology and the younger audience that this show is for. Because I think that when you just ignore it completely, it leaves people with a false sense of understanding. And Poseidon's not a great person. And do they make it more complicated in this book series? Yes. And am I okay with that? Yes. Like, I don't want Percy's dad to be the worst person on the planet. I think that would, in a lot of ways, mess up the series. But I also don't want to ignore all of these stories about how he's mistreated women. And so I really appreciated this. The fight scene in the basement with all the statues was fine. The statues were creepy. I like that they put a little bit more weight on Grover's relationship with his Uncle Ferdinand as he's looking at him so sad, and how young his uncle looked, because they make him look so much older in the movie and they just kind of leave it off as a joke. And the same in the books, it's a joke, that is my Uncle Ferdinand, oh my gosh, and then we move on. But here we get to sit and think about the fact that this boy just found his uncle that he has never seen again until this moment, and what happened to him, and that it doesn't make him lose, like, belief that they can do this. It just, I don't know, it's sad, but it's sweet. Like, he gets some type of strength from it, even though it wouldn't be surprising if he just broke down, right? I don't know, it was so complicated. I really liked it. And then, of course, all this stuff with them, like, fighting and finally, like, coming to a, like, place of understanding in the basement was really nice. Grover finally being like, no, we're talking about this. You guys are both being stupid right now, and we need to talk about this. And then, like, coming to an understanding. That was good and very sweet. And then, best of all, they had my favorite line in there, which is, the gods will think you're impertinent. I am impertinent. I told my dad that if they're going to leave any line from the books in that scene, I wanted it to be that one. I was so happy. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, as so many people on the internet have been talking about, we got to see Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. And I'm not going to lie, I actually like him as Hermes for the most part. My only problem with the scene was that he moves so slowly. Because Hermes is, like, constantly moving, right? And so them having him do, like, this kind of, like, laid back walk into the Empire State Building, while it was fun watching him, like, put the key in and see the 600th floor button, and then hearing him be like, you're not gonna believe this, guys, as he walks into Mount Olympus. He was just moving so slowly. Like, he didn't need to walk slowly through the city. He could have flown there in, like, a split second. The box literally just disappears in the book. And so it just kind of felt weird. Like, maybe he just thought this was such a funny thing to mail that he wanted to do it with, like, style. But I would have expected him to move a little quicker. But otherwise, it was fine. I just don't picture Hermes as a guy who sits in an elevator and sings a song to the elevator music, you know? Otherwise, I liked him. I think he's gonna be good, you know, as long as they don't keep making weird choices like that. But I like this episode. I have a lot of hopes for the next ones. I really think that they're going in a good direction. Bringing up future stuff. The only thing that I'm worried they're not going to do that is going to really break my heart, and this is a me thing. This is not anything anyone else has ever said to me. My favorite chapter of any of the books is the Procrustes scene with the waterbeds. And I know no one cares about that scene. But it's like, it's one of those moments where Percy finally gets to show that he can solve problems on his own in a really smart way. And it's also kind of the start of, like, Dark Percy, because he does not even think about Procrustes' feelings and what he's doing to him when he tricks him and kills him in that scene. And I think that it's really important to Percy's growth. I also just think it's funny. And I like things that are funny. I'm 24, but I still am a child sometimes, okay? And so, this is me putting out to the ether. I really want to see that scene. I really hope that it's in there. And I'm so excited for the next 5 episodes. We'll get back to this next week, and I'll see you later.